You're very brave. Flossing
Testing
your teeth on
testing your SIM is the equivalent of flossing your teeth. Okay. I'm gonna send this over to 2, and then we can kick it off. It is 1 o'clock. We'll wait 1 more minute. We got a good amount of attendees that are on right now. We're live on YouTube, and we're going to talk about how to test your SIM.
You know what? I should share this in the in our break SecSim channel.
That on a Slack channel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to post on LinkedIn. Thanks everybody for your patience. 1 more minute. We'll kick it off, get started. Got to do all these fun marketing activities so everyone can join and see what we're up to.
Gotta pump up those numbers. They're rookie numbers.
What hashtag would you use right now for this?
Black hat.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh. Black Hat 2020. Totally trolling Black Hat today. This is not a Black Hat talk. I totally use those tags. All right. Like that is totally a security tactic, right? Like just take advantage, a little bit of social engineering there. And I'm going to hit the record button. So we are recording on the cloud. And we are started. So thanks everybody for joining. We have the wonderful Amanda Berlin, who does, and I should pull up the slides now at this point so I can actually talk to something intelligence. But she's wonderful, does security analyst, detection response, senior detection engineer. Is that right?
That's part of it, yeah.
And likes to fish. I think earlier this week you were on I think it was your son's birthday and you said you went fishing?
Yeah, it was too windy though. We didn't catch anything.
Where were you fishing?
Lake Erie.
Do you eat the fish out of Lake Erie?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Definitely.
Oh gosh, you're so serious about that. I thought Lake Erie, you weren't supposed to eat it.
Perch and walleye, man.
Does it taste good?
Yeah, super good. I love perch.
That's cool. And then you got the other kind of fishing, right?
Right. I don't do that kind anymore. I used to all the time.
I do think last week was really interesting. I don't know if you saw the draft blog post I made, which is going to be published last week, but my brother started a new job about 2 weeks ago, and he literally got fished, and it pivoted from email to phone call, and I got the whole string and the details.
Wow.
And they now call him Kevin. He went to the extent of buying $400 worth of Apple gift cards, and right after he bought them, he realized that he had gotten fished when his boss sent him a message saying he doesn't know what he's talking about. So fortunately, he could resell them, right? But all right, we're not here to talk about fishing.
We aren't.
But this is kind of like fishing, right?
I mean,
testing your SIM.
Sure.
Yeah, I guess you have other tests like phishing simulation, right? And in this case, we're detecting more or less threats across your environment and leveraging your SIM to do so. Everyone, I turned on interactive questions, so you can ask questions that can get voted up. We'll try our best to respond to them and make it a great experience. And we'll talk about 5 different tests you can run on your SIM and walk through and guide through that. So I already introduced a moment ago, Amanda Berlin, speaking at Black Hat this week, which is exciting. What are you talking about at Black Hat?
Mental health stuff and how companies can do better for their employees.
It's important.
Mm-hmm.
What's number 1?
letting them, if you want to ease into it, it's letting them pick what they want to do by giving them like several choices. A lot of people are doing not per diems, but like a monthly amount that they can spend on whatever they want, from like gym memberships to therapy to whatever.
All right. Are the gyms open?
Yeah.
Not in Michigan.
Mine
Yeah,
is,
Michigan, we
but I'm
don't
not
have
going.
gyms. So no gyms in Michigan, from my understanding. But someday it will go back to normal. And then myself, Patrick Garrity, VP Operations, formerly worked at Duo, do everything in product sales, marketing, coordinating Amanda's webinars. So what we're gonna hop through today, as far as agenda, is how to test your SIM. So challenges with SIMs today. So we'll walk a little bit through some of the existing challenges we continually see with talking with customers, examples of different detection tests you can do. And what I find interesting is when we're going through these different things, I mean, most customers that even have a SIM still can't detect all these things. And it's because they get to the extent of like collecting logs. And so I think it's really important to emphasize, like, yes, people should be testing their SIM to make sure that they get to the capabilities of doing detection. And then, you know, of course, things at times could get misconfigured or configuration could change. And so making sure that you're essentially being able to stay up to date in doing detection capabilities, right?
Yeah, retesting and scripting stuff is what I always recommend. So in our lab, we have several different things that are just scheduled scripts, PowerShell scripts or Bash scripts or whatever that run to test detections.
Automation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing. We'll then talk about Logmira GPO for better visibility a little bit on that. That's a free tool we have for everyone that has a SIM or no SIM, or Logmira. And then how Logmira can help from a SIM threat detection response perspective. So sounds good. On the challenges with SIM side, I mean, I literally on a monthly basis talk to hundreds of different customers, right, about some of the challenges with SIM. A lot of the different areas that we continually hear and see is the aspect of, I have limited team. A lot of times people nowadays get security expertise and change jobs, is a common theme, right? I might not have enough expertise to actually tweak a SIM and set it up. Alert fatigue is very common, lots of different noise, right? And then manual process of fine tuning a SIM and getting it tuned in to do effective detection. And so as we're talking about actually testing the SIM, it's pretty important to do these things because a lot of times the result you're trying to get gets overlooked by the complexity of the challenge in this market. And so, you know, if we look at it from a complexity perspective, as you look at SIM, right, there's a lot of different steps from ingesting, parsing, threat intelligence, detection rules, alerting, knowing what to do and how to prioritize. And the reality is like you take a SIM, SOAR, and then you typically layer on a team of people. And one thing I'll emphasize as we get towards the later side is like, yeah, the value prop of Logmira is to automate the majority of this. And we even encourage, if you're on this call today and you're a Logmira customer, we would want you to test even our product, right? To make sure that you're able to detect common types of threats and make sure that it's configured properly, right? And then the other thing I'd emphasize is just on the research perspective, 451 came out with a report a year or two ago, 75% of SIM deployments fail. And so just with the reality of that, even if you're not the person operating the SIM, maybe you're a CISO or a CIO, hey, I want to see actually that we can detect shit. Oh, sorry, I swore. We're live on a webinar.
Beep.
You can shame me in the comments or Q&A. I'll be more than happy to take it. But yeah, the reality is like, yes, often and many times it never gets deployed beyond log aggregation, right? And so people spend all this money and don't actually get to the value. And then they get surprised when they get breached or owned, right? And they're like, we didn't see it coming. How many times have you seen that, Amanda?
Neither have your logs. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of comedic, right? Like that's the reality of the security world.
Got to take it
a
in
lot of
stride.
cases. Yep.
Otherwise, you'll just have ulcers the rest of your life.
Yeah, and I think when we're talking about deployment of a SIEM, like what's the actual goal of a SIEM? Log collection is a lot of times the bar, but the reality, that's not where the true value is. The true value is in actually getting to detection. And so when you aggregate all this information, effectively, you can detect real threats within your environment that we'll talk through. And then also, understanding lateral movement, ongoing compromise, scanning, recon attacks, right? Getting visibility into all these things. And so in some cases, hey, maybe people just don't get them working because ignorance is bliss. Is my other thought. No.
Possible.
Yeah, I think that's sometimes unfortunately the case, right?
Because once you have all of that knowledge of what's going on, you now have way more stuff to do.
Can be true. I do think the aspect of like people just don't have time is the number one reason why they don't get them deployed.
Yep.
Because of the complexity of the tools and the solutions in the space. And so yeah, as a result, right, like people fail to properly reduce their attack surface and they get owned. And that happens time and time again. Even so, it's like I think in the last week and a half, been on calls with customers getting contacted by the FBI with no idea what's going on, right? That's not a fun situation to be in. So let's hop into why we're here, which is to talk about SIEM detection tests.
Heck yeah. All right, so
shut up, Patrick.
I put together 5 different examples. Let's see here. You have those, right?
Yeah. So the first one we're going to talk through is Recon.
Yeah, first one's Recon and password spraying, which is super simple to run. There's a screenshot of everything that you have to do from a command line perspective. So this attack is from one server in our lab to our domain controller. And it's spraying, I don't know, there's, I think it's, 36 different users in that usernames.txt field. And it uses a different passwords.txt field. And it's just single, username, password per line and just a document, right? And this is a PowerShell script that you can download via Daft Hack on GitHub. So he gave this to, the community for something that you can use to test. And it's super simple. So if you go to the next slide, I think it shows.
Hold on a sec, I will. It
actually shows the video that I can walk through.
All right, cool. We're gonna do that. Before that, though, I was gonna launch a poll.
Okay.
We gotta make this interactive.
I mean, sure.
And oh wait, I think we might have a comment or a question, so that's good.
We can share the slides later.
The poll is, what is the biggest challenge with SIEM? So parsing logs, correlating threat intelligence, noisy alerting, lack of actionable results. So I'll launch.
Everybody to answer all of these.
I think there's a countdown. I don't know how this works on Zoom, but 0:17. If everyone can take like maybe
it won't let me vote.
That was the panelist one. They had a checkbox that said, "Do you want panelists to vote?"
Fine, I won't vote.
Poll is coming in. Can everyone see the poll or no?
It popped up for me.
All right, cool. So hopefully everyone can see it. It looks like we have a few more seconds. We have 11 of 17.
I've never done a Zoom poll before, man.
Yeah, so it looks like number 1 is noisy alerting. Number 2 is lack of actionable information. Number 3 is parsing logs, and number 4 is correlating threat intelligence. So
cool beans.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We got about 76% of people. So that's completely understandable. Sorry, a little bit of a pivot there, right? Because I forgot.
I mean, that's a good lead into the next. Is it the next slide or the one after that? I don't know.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we'll hop
All these
in
pop-ups.
and you're going to talk through.
Let's see if this shows well. Yeah,
Yep.
This is me doing password spraying. Yay. All right. So this is, you just open up Windows PowerShell, right? Run as admin. Otherwise you can't import scripts. So that domain password spray you can see in the background on the right-hand side, that's what you download from GitHub. We're setting the execution policy there to unrestricted because I want to run stuff, even though we won't talk about all the things regarding that. So here is import module, and then you import the PS1 file. Oh, you can actually hear me typing. So I don't think there's any background talking in any of these videos, but you may want to mute them. So it's invoke dash domain password spray. User list is the switch to import the user list text file, and dash password list is to import the password list.
I would mute, but I can't.
That's all right. Just everybody, if there's any background noises, just ignore those.
I was trying to see if I could. Sorry, I messed it up, and
That's
we were
fine.
like right, I think right here in the video.
Yeah, that's good.
And then, hey, when you run this, right? So this is doing the spraying essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How are you gonna know if it's successful or not?
Well, your SIEM should tell you. First
and
off,
then the other pieces is like, so where would you test this on? Like, right?
So if you're allowed, you can test it in prod because it's not going to lock out any accounts unless you feed it real account information. Everything that we have in that test file are just me banging on the keyboard, making random users that aren't real. And it will still generate the failed login attempts because it's still trying to auth to Windows with those usernames and passwords, but it's not going to lock out any accounts because those aren't real accounts. So it's pretty safe to test on a dev environment, especially if you don't just keep on running it over and over and over again, because depending on the size and your environment, all that stuff, you don't want to overwhelm anything. But it just tried 36 accounts at once, and then it actually waits a half an hour just in case those are real. So it clears like the default account lockout threshold. And you can go in, Patrick, I think the next slide shows you actual event viewer. Yeah, so you can go into the domain controller if you're allowed, right? And actually see the 4625 failed logon attempts for all of those. And like I said, these ones are just all fake. There's a really good article that Sean, why do I always forget his last name? The one guy that runs Blue Team Con.
Sean Blue Team.
Somebody will know his name. He wrote a really good blog post on how to detect different password spraying techniques and what the thresholds are. And then on the right-hand side, this is us detecting one, but against Outlook.
Metcalf is his name. Good.
Thank you,
got great
Sean
attendees
Metcalf.
Today.
Thanks. I knew he would know.
2 people got that name.
I always forget his last name. Yeah, but Sean Metcalf wrote a really good article about it, and this is just us detecting. It's a different threshold for web access, but same kind of idea. So that's easy number one. Just
hey, I got a question on this one, right?
Sure.
This is an idea of mine. So do you have to have administrative access to run this tool or no?
I mean, that's relative.
Okay, that's good.
You should, yeah. Because I mean, you're running PowerShell as an admin on the box that you're on. So you technically at least should have admin to run it. There's ways to get around that too, but we won't go into all of that.
I was kind of going, where I was going was like, this might be a fun tool to lock your coworkers out of their accounts.
Let's
don't do that.
You didn't hear that here. Don't.
I'm just saying.
Just use your boss's email or your boss's login account. No.
This is the joy of being in the security industry, right? The
Next
things
slide.
you can do. All right, next slide. Patrick,
All right.
stop. Bad idea.
So this is privilege escalation, which is fairly easy. In the last video, you saw me run set execution policy. So execution policy is kind of just something that's built into PowerShell, not necessarily as a security feature, but something that's to keep admins from shooting themselves in the foot and running scripts that they shouldn't be running without knowing what they're doing. So you can, there's some simple regex that can be written to detect a whole bunch of different types of attempts to get past execution policy, to bypass execution policy settings. And this is just one example. So on this blog from Scott Sutherland, it's 15 different ways to bypass that policy. So you see if I do get execution policy here and it's restricted, and this is just downloading and running a PowerShell script without having to have the right execution policy set, because -no-p runs it with no profile, which makes it just work. So if you go to the next one, it'll show the video walkthrough too.
I wonder, like when I try and play this, right, essentially when I go to change the volume, it's right where the slide pops up.
Oh, right. So,
yeah. Yeah. It's
that's great.
You see that?
Yeah. Next time I can, like, I don't know, move the whole video over in the slide, I guess.
Oh wait, actually I could go up. No, sorry. Sorry, I'm trying too hard.
I mean, I have it up too. I can edit it while it's playing on yours.
You're all good. Go ahead.
All right. So this is me running PowerShell without right-clicking and running as admin, right? So I don't have the ability to run scripts as is. So if you do get dash execution policy, just went to a wrong screen. There we go. It shows restricted, right? Like I said before. I'm going to change to the temp directory where all my stuff is at, even though I don't think that I needed to. It's just habit now. So running PowerShell.exe -no-p for no profile. -c is going to use this thing to create a new object within that web client. And it's going to put a download string. That download string is in that link that was in the last slide. And it's, if you go to that bit.ly link, is really just on GitHub. It's a PowerShell script that runs and just, you'll see what it does here in a second. Yep, that's all it does. Is it prints out that, but it's an executable PowerShell script that you can bypass that execution policy. And that kind of stuff we've actually seen in live environments trying to download droppers on web servers. So something that's fairly trivial to test out.
What's a dropper on a web server?
They're basically trying to get admin access to a server that's on the internet. Okay.
And then that would allow them to connect essentially.
Yeah, and get anything off of that web server and maybe pivot internally.
And is that, would you consider that command and control?
Depends on what they do with it.
Okay. No, that's good.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not, this is good for me, but also probably some people on our call as well might not associate those things as much, right?
All right. And this is what it looks like in Event Viewer on the left-hand side there. And then on the right is actually where we've caught it with some of our customers, with one of our customers specifically. That's why there's everything blacked out. But yeah, that's it actually downloading and running pretty much that exact same thing, but to a malicious web server that had a whole bunch of weird stuff on it. Not saying that we looked too much into that, because that would be not something that we should do, but it had weird stuff on it.
I'm kind of curious on the call in the questions or comments or whatever it is. How many people just look through Event Viewer for these things every day?
Oh, every day? I mean,
No, I think that's kind of the point.
That's a great
is, like,
poll. Who else hates Event Viewer?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much information, right? That's within Event Viewer and logged within Windows that it's hard to actually figure out what matters, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we'll hop to the third test, which is lateral movement.
Yeah, so PSExec is part of Sysinternal Suites, which is a group of tools that was written a long time ago and now Microsoft owns. And it has a bunch of really cool stuff. One of those things that's really good for admin use is PSExec, because you can run commands and script like software installs and other stuff throughout your environment just with this one thing, right? So it'll spawn processes on remote servers. If you don't use this in your environment, probably would be good to detect on. And even if you do, there's different things that you can, like IOCs that you can look for, saying, if it's not this admin that normally runs PSExec against all of these devices, then we probably should detect on that too, right? So this is me just opening a command prompt on a remote server using PSExec. So I'm currently on our server 1 in our lab, and you go into where that exe is in PowerShell. And you can do it. You don't have to do it via PowerShell. You can do it in command anyways. We can walk through it while I'm doing it.
Cool.
Oh, no,
wait.
back.
I'm not good at this today.
There we go.
I'm better than last time. Last time I didn't take my Adderall though.
Right.
This time I made sure I did.
And this time we're going to run it as admin, because, we don't want to have to bypass while we're doing another thing. So that's all of the different tools that come with sysinternals. So I'm just going to run PSExec, state what server I want to run it against, which is our domain controller. And then CMD is the program I want to run. So it runs it and it gives me a remote shell into the domain controller. If you do who am I, it'll show you where you're logged in at and as who. And net users is also something that's good to detect on. It's one of the first things that an attacker will do once they get access to a box, because it'll show you what users are logged in, and hence like what hashes they might be able to get.
The aspect of working with customers, right? I think there's been a few examples where they are running PSExec for legitimate reasons. Mm-hmm. I think what ends up happening with most people in a SIEM is they'll be like, oh, we use this, so let's just shut off all the alerting. And I think that's important that you noted, which is like, yeah, in those cases, what you do is you try and isolate and identify like IP address, maybe /user, right? Yep. So that you're isolating that noise, but you're still monitoring for that activity across your full environment else, right?
Yep. And one of the things that we do that commonly with is we have a handful of customers that run PowerShell exec bypass string like commands, and that's what they do with a lot of their automation. But you can actually add custom flags to your PowerShell command that don't do anything. I can't remember off the top of my head what they are, but you could run like a text portion of it and just add like, this is my company, yay, and then look for that string in that, and that's something that you can use to whitelist it too.
I should have a poll. How many people on this call use PSExec? I guess you can answer in the
legitimately chat or maliciously.
I guess tell us your story. The best PSExec story wins.
And then that's what PSExec looks like basically in Sysmon, which we also highly recommend everybody installs, because Sysmon gives you, as you can tell, this is the same event, but two different sections. The left is Sysmon, right is default Microsoft auditing, and the Sysmon one gives you things like hashes and all that kind of stuff, which is pretty cool.
Some more detail. It doesn't look as nice, but it has more detail is what you're saying.
It does, yeah. Yeah, it like doubles the amount of information they give you.
Cool.
And this is my favorite one in here because of the comment, but that's just us detecting PS6 use in the network. Yeah.
And I like what's nice here is like, do you see down below stacked evidence where like it happened multiple times and we're not just creating a bunch of more alerts right within the product. Yeah. There is a question, and you know, we're always encouraging people to run sysmon, install Logmira GPO to get better logging. Are there any risks to installing sysmon?
Not that I know of.
No risk, just do it. Commit.
Nope.
Yeah, you should just install it. Someone did tell me today they were trying to install and they were getting errors, but I think that's probably just someone doesn't know how to install software.
Or they don't have the permission too. That's possible. There's a really good Swift on Security has probably the most used sysmon config out there, which is pretty cool. If you search for sysmon config on Google, theirs is the first one that pops up.
Cool. Swift. Test number 4, privileged escalation.
Yeah, so we don't want to just do Windows stuff, right? You also want to make sure other stuff in your environment's being monitored and making sure alerts are working on. So this probably the simplest way to ever test anything like this is to just type a wrong password 3 times when you try to sudo to root. Or sudo to anything, really. It's going to give you the same error message, just with a different user account. So that's, I mean, we can watch the video, but it's literally just me typing, SSHing to something and typing the wrong password 3 times.
I wish I remember what this was, but there was a sudo joke earlier this week that I read, and it was funny, but I can't remember.
There's the original like XKCD, make me a sandwich. No, sudo make me a sandwich, and then she doesn't.
All right. We're gonna teach you how to SSH to do a test.
This is the most exciting YouTube video that you'll watch today. Amanda SSHing and typing the wrong password. So there's me successfully doing it. And sudo root, wrong password.
I should have done another poll, like how many of you have kids and how many are going back to school this fall? Yeah, we just found out this, I think 2 nights ago, that we're not going back to school. So good
really?
Times. I'm gonna teach my kids how to hack. You know, I got them Raspberry Pis, and then I'm gonna get them Kali Linux.
Perfect.
Nothing like a 7-year-old, you know, hacking away. I think one of the things as a parent is like, oh man, what if your kid was the Twitter hacker, right? Like, why'd you do the Bitcoin? I think it's interesting, but it's like, why'd you do the Bitcoin thing? Because that just gets into money laundering,
right?
And so as we talk about privilege escalation within Logmira, right? Here's an example of matched evidence identifying, and then what actually to do from a response perspective, right?
Yep. Ta-da.
All right, I'm going to stop rambling and we'll talk about test number 5.
I like number 4 because, I mean, the title of the webinar is Easy Ways to Test Your SIM. And that's probably like the easiest test you could possibly do.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, within reason.
Right? Like typing a password wrong 3 times.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Test number 5, we're getting into malicious code.
Yeah, so we covered some Windows stuff, we covered Linux, and then I figured this is something cool that can test most endpoint protection and alerting on it. So if you don't know what an Eicar file is, Eicar.org hosts these files that are like just test files that are not malicious that you can run against your environment to see what it detects. and they have different stuff on there, but this is just their basic zip file that I tried to download several times. So that's kind of what that looks like. But if you go to the next one, we'll walk through.
Hey, I do have a question about Windows Defender, right?
Sure.
So Windows Defender is like you install it on the host itself, but there's really no like centralized reporting on that, correct? By default,
are you telling
right?
me or asking me? By
asking
default,
you.
no. By default, no.
Yeah. So in that case, like a lot of times, yeah, you might get a detection locally, but the administrator is not going to be notified or understand that, correct?
Yeah, unless you have some of the more advanced Microsoft licensing, and
like the E5 with
and
ATP.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which not everyone has. And
No.
so, and actually, thanks, David, Defender reports to ATP.
Yeah.
So, and I was asking that question, right? Because I think there's a combination of like people that have ATP and people that don't.
There's not a lot of people that have it.
Correct. And the majority of people don't have it, right? And so I think there's some aspect of combination of like, well, you can have Defender, but still not even give it visibility into stuff that this is doing.
Right.
And that's actually somewhere where I think the SIEM comes into play, where if you don't have ATP, but you're using Defender, you can get visibility into those things, at least from a central reporting perspective. Is that accurate or right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, and then you don't have to, no, you should, I mean, you should put things in place like ATP, right? But it's at least one way to get that visibility if you're using Defender standalone, right?
Yep.
Maybe David has some other comments, like it sounds like he might be using it and have a lot of experience with it. So if you have any thoughts, feel free to throw them in the chat section. And we can talk more about, well, was there anything you want to say before I hop to the video?
No.
Hey, there is some Q&A, and like, unfortunately with Zoom, I have to flip over to another.
No, it's all right. I
screen to
answered
see
one
it.
of them.
Oh, what was the question?
If we were going to release the slide decks.
Cool. Blog post and slide deck coming.
Yep.
And someone also posted about the ATP configure your SIEM as well link, and I'm happy to share this link in the chat so everyone can see it. We're having a fun time. Oh, and there might be one more question that just popped up.
Nope,
no, I think it was just thank you.
We got this.
Cool.
We got this, Patrick.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna message to all panelists and attendees this link. Thank you. I think it was Scott. That does talk about Defender ATP and configuring your SIEM to get this visibility that we're talking about, right? Whether it's you're using us or you're using somebody else, it's like these are things you should just be doing. Cool. Right. This video looks crazy.
This video of Amanda browsing the internet.
Oh, and I clicked the wrong button. Sorry.
There we go. So it's all on eicar.org. And I wanted this to be like endpoint agnostic because we run one kind of endpoint, I didn't want to show it just for that. It should work for all of them. If not, get a different endpoint solution. So that's Windows Defender stopping it. Me patiently waiting. And even me trying to continue to run it, it won't let me do anything. So.
Got some good background noise in there.
Is there?
Yeah.
I can't hear it, so that's good. My house is full of teenagers, so I never know what's going to be happening in the background.
Yeah. Hey, and there are some good questions on this, right? So on the detection side, right, there's some questions around, hey, what's the worst case scenario if you're not alerting and detecting these types of things, right? And I think a few different things that would come to my mind is like, well, you know, in the instance of like password spraying, that's detecting an early stage of an attack. And so like essentially you're able to defend against that much earlier than when you're compromised from that, right?
Yeah.
Would be, you know, one example. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
I mean, really any of them, somebody could, you know, fail sudo because they have, you know, an idea of what the password could be, but they could retry that sudo password several times. And if you don't see the alert, you know, maybe they'd get it and have access to a Linux box.
So pretty much like, I think with any of these, it's like someone's trying to own you or you are already owned.
Mm-hmm.
Is the reality, right? So
Yep.
like even being able to do that level of detection gives you visibility that there's a problem that needs to be taken action on, right? Which is, you know, one of the areas when we hop to like, you know, what to actually do, where, you know, this is a case that helps a customer of Logmira's, for example, on what workflow should be followed in order to remediate the issue.
Yeah, and this is just a one-step workflow. Some of them have multiple, right? Like asking the question if it's been quarantined or not, and if it hasn't, you know, what to do after that, specifically depending on what kind of infection or finding it has been.
Cool. Now, Logmira, right? And this is something I'm excited about, which is the fact that like, you know, what I think like what you did is you were banging your head against the wall because you have to configure GPOs all day long, right?
So as much as I love group policy, I used to be a really big group policy nerd and like spend way too much time configuring it. I don't want to have to redo the same thing over and over and over again. And there's a lot of stuff in group policy, and not everybody likes it as much as I do. So we found a lot of our customers were coming on, and I mean, even before I worked at Logmira, like other places that I've worked, a lot of places, you know, didn't have the proper configuration set for logging, like event logging. Windows doesn't turn on everything by default. And, you know, when you have an incident and you go back to look at stuff, it might not be there for you to even see what happened. So I decided, instead of me just redoing this in like the 50th lab that I've set up this year, that there had to be an easier way to import all of these group policy settings for logging, because it does like command line logging and PowerShell module logging and all of the things that you could possibly want. And so I just exported all the settings and put it on GitHub, because it's super easy to import as opposed to going and setting all 50 settings.
I think the other thing that ties this on the Logmira service side, right, is we're also looking to see if customers actually enable these settings.
Oh, and we know when they do.
Because that way we're actually logging security events that are going to help make a difference, right?
Yep. Log volume spikes, and then they start seeing things that they didn't even know they were running.
It's great. Yeah, sometimes there's surprise or shock, right?
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, I didn't know that person was doing that with PowerShell.
Yep. And maybe they should, but they probably shouldn't be, right? So list up all these baseline recommendations, right? As far as what to configure that's not configured by default.
No, none of those.
What's your favorite recommendation?
I mean, logon shows you password spraying.
Okay.
So that's super helpful. And I'm a big fan of the PowerShell module logging.
Cool. I like the password spraying stuff as well. Because like it is, I came from two-factor authentication, right? And like I think like coming from Duo, it's like, oh, two-factor just solves all your problems, you don't need to worry about it. But like, yeah, the reality is like there's a lot of things that can go wrong, like misconfiguration,
Yeah.
Which is very common. And so like understanding that you can detect at different stages in the life cycle, and password spraying is like pretty much the beginning of any attack. Not any, but like probably the most common attack, which is credential compromise.
Yeah.
And so it gets exciting to me on like the aspect of like, well, yeah, you're detecting a VPN connection that someone's doing password spraying, and then you can actually block the IP addresses, right?
Yep.
Who needs two-factor anymore? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just totally just kidding. Like, I constantly still talk to people that don't have two-factor, and it's like, what WTF? If you're on the call and you don't have two-factor, you should put two-factor in place. But yeah, I think the combination of having detection early in all different areas, right, is something to me that it becomes extremely notable that most people don't have detection capabilities at all.
Yeah, so Scott has a couple good questions. First one, so Logmira would be at the domain level GPO or workstation level. Depends on your environment and what you want to send to your SIEM.
All the above.
If you're using a SIEM that charges you based on log volume, I don't recommend implementing this at all. Because if you charge based on log volume, this is going to spike your log volume like crazy. It doesn't really have any impact on the server because we actually set the different sizes that you're supposed to use for log retention. But yeah, it highly depends on your entire environment, because like I would put it at the main level if I wanted to send, you know, all my Windows logs on all my hosts everywhere, right? Yeah. Super just depends. And they are based on the logging cheat sheets. So I'm a co-host for Breaking Down Security, and we have like another podcast that's breaking down incident response also. And Michael Goff is one of the guys that runs Malware Archaeology, and my other co-host Brian Betcher. And yeah, so it's most of them are the same. We have a handful that I don't believe are on there, or maybe they are now. I don't know. But yeah, it's a lot of it's the same. They have some really good cheat sheets.
Yeah, leveraging use those. It sounds like we should turn them into more templates.
Yeah.
Make it easy. There is a link on a blog post if you just search Logmira with details, the video as far as the walkthrough.
Yeah, we don't have to go through the walkthrough.
Yeah, so you can get this on the Logmira blog. There's also a GitHub site with the actual GPO template that you can download. If there are any questions you have about Logmira, about Logmira, you know, all those sorts of things, our website, we have contact us form as well.
Yeah, and in the GitHub link, if you don't trust the fact that I did what I said I did in the GPO, the report is in there as well, that you can just grab the report out of it and it'll show you all of the settings.
So you can do it yourself.
Yeah, test it in a lab too first if you want, you know.
Hey, just put it in production. I trust you.
Or just put it in prod. Go for it, man.
Hey, so high level, like pivoting a little bit, right? Like, so where does Logmira fit into testing, right? I'd say there's a combination of customers that might be happy with their solution because they have the resources and time to actually get it operational. As I kind of mentioned earlier, like SIEM failure is very, very common. And so people end up not getting to a baseline level of detection consistently with the existing products because of the amount of noise, tweaking, tuning. And so essentially we're automating on the front end based on integration, ingestion, parsing, correlation with threat intelligence, detection rules, alerting, prioritization, reporting. And then we're triggering alerts, right? With meaningful information based on threats that we identify. And then more or less, can it be automated or not, right? Which is like, hey, does someone actually need to validate, investigate, or respond or not, right? In the case where they don't need to, we can automate taking action. In the case where, you know, we can automate, then providing a playbook or workflow on what to do, as Amanda showed through some of the different examples in the tests. And then on the integration side, right, like we really have broad coverage from a support perspective. So really this integrates natively. I think at this point, we're over somewhere around 100+ log types that we're supporting and integrating and constantly adding more so that we can effectively do really good detection and response with our customers. In the areas I would say, from a help perspective, automated detection and response, which is, helping with the security operations workflows and what to do and take action. And there is a value to this that a lot of times gets overlooked, in that we're providing a playbook that someone in IT or even on a help desk can respond with, which also increases and gives them new skills because now they've actually done security work. And so, that type of intrinsic value is extremely important, considering like we have security skills gap in the industry. Everyone I talk to is struggling to find people with security expertise, and they can't afford them, essentially, right? And then, beyond that, also the capability to detect lateral movement via Honeypot. I don't think we talked about testing Honeypot, but like you can literally just go to the URL to trigger log in and trigger an alert. Pretty simple, easy test. That might be easier actually than your Linux test, Amanda.
Maybe. It's pretty close.
So if I hop in, and I should have had this ready, apologize, but just to show on the Logmira side, I have some new detections in here. So this is my first time getting to kind of show off some of our detection capabilities that we haven't shown before. If I can actually log in. Good times. Sorry for my demo failure, but yeah, I do want to show.
That's why all my stuff is recorded.
Yeah, someone's gonna grab my OTP code here. Oh, that was the wrong account anyway. So wrong OTP code. You just need 3 consecutive ones, right? So we're all good.
Sure. Yeah.
That one's used.
There you go.
If anybody has questions about, oh, that's funny. My phone is named P. Diddy, and someone caught that on the off. Yes, that's my phone nickname. But yeah, to show some different examples, right? So, from a setup perspective, we deploy in a matter of a few hours. I mean, in a lot of cases, we're fully, near fully operational in under an hour or two. The sensor itself takes an Ubuntu server, and then it's up and running, and we start integrating away. And so when we're talking about the sensor itself, right, essentially we're just adding modules, trying to navigate through all the Zoom screens that pop up. But yeah, essentially you could grab things like Carbon Black, put your API keys in. Silence would be a good example. Office 365, and able to ingest. And then we also collect syslog, and you send Windows logs via nxlog to us. And then just to show, once we're getting those logs, the types of things we're surfacing, right? So like domain administrator account created, right? That's a good example of, you might want to validate when you give someone got access, and you're doing that out of band here. And so like, hey, you get the notification, you can look at it and actually know what to do from a response perspective. But some of the other ones I was going to hop in to show are like, well, Cisco AnyConnect anomalous access, right? Well, like in this case, someone's actually doing password spraying on a VPN. And so if I grab this ticket, essentially, now that I'm aware of this, I can essentially block the IP address of the source attack, or the source IP of the attack. And now I'm actually stopping the attack early in the life cycle, less to worry about from a security perspective. And we can actually take it a step further, and we can automate this action from a response perspective, right? So super easy, intuitive. And then I wanna scroll down a little bit further to show some of the other examples, which would be like, for instance, Okta, right? Unfeasible location login. So someone essentially in this instance is trying to log in from different locations at the same time. From a from a user perspective, right? So that gives us an indication that like there's high likelihood of account sharing or account compromise within the environment. So Amanda, any other comments you want to say regarding the detections?
No, but we have a couple of questions.
Sweet, go.
So if says, does Logmira need additional setup for existing Logmira customers outside of following the instructions on GitHub page, or will it just work and the logs will be sent to the sensor? So it'll just work as long as the host that gets the group policy settings is already sending us Windows logs. Because you need the two things, right? You need the group policy settings to take precedence on the device, and you need nxlog to actually ship the logs. So as long as you already have nxlog sending the regular Windows logs, as soon as that GPO takes effect, it'll just work. There may be another config file you might need, depending on when yours is from.
Hey, and feel free to reach out to via like when you're in the product, right? The question mark, you can interact with our security analysts or on a ticket, right?
Yeah, we can always schedule something to go through it. So what happens is when you turn on those GPOs, it turns on different channels in the Windows event log, and nxlog by default only looks, well, with our config, only looks at 4 different channels, I think. And you have to go like uncomment those lines so it looks at the right channels. Nope, you're muted, Patrick.
Hey, and then there's another question. Sorry, I was chomping away on my lunch still. But there's another question about, do we do anything related to DNS?
So
I'm assuming like the Windows logs, right?
I mean, so Sysmon gives super awesome DNS event logs. So that's another reason why we highly recommend it. We have a bunch of different threat lists implemented into Logmira that do a variety of things based on DNS, but yeah.
Hey, there is one other thing on that as well, which is like we have like another way we help with DNS is we do integrate with Open DNS. And the thing there I'd say is like, yeah, a tool like that can create a ton of noise. The value where we come into play is surfacing the things that really matter. Like command and control, for example, or things that are real imminent threats, right? Without inundating you with all the information from those tools. So, I encourage everyone to take a look at Logmira if you haven't. From a SIEM perspective tool, if you are in the market, take a look at Logmira. We have a great product and a great way to interact with our customers. Easy to use and get to the time to value that you need to be doing detection. And then next week we have our search and reporting product update as we came out with some more advanced capabilities to help our customers with search reporting functionality, which a lot of times ties to things like compliance. So that's pretty exciting. That's with myself and our CTO, Matt Warner. So Amanda, anything else you want to say before we cut it for the day?
If you're virtually attending Black Hat, that's what I'm going to go do right now, is do my Black Hat talk.
All right, go join Amanda at Black Hat. Thanks so much for everyone that's come on. There's a few other questions, I think, that just came up. Does Logmira use agents? Which you essentially know we're using on Windows. So, for example, nxlog for log collection.
But you don't necessarily need it. You can use WEF, Windows Event Forwarder. We just have one box that you put on the network. It's an Ubuntu box with a Docker container, and you just have to get logs to it somehow.
That's it. Get the logs to it and send it to us. Yeah, it collects syslog as well, right? So
yeah, from your firewalls. Collects pretty much everything.
Hey, one question I have for you are, what are all the log type? Like, what are the log collector types? A lot of times, as we're talking about protocols, like there's syslog. There's other things too, right?
I mean, APIs.
APIs. Is there anything else besides that, or no?
Not directly, no.
All right, I'm just throwing a weird question out.
Yeah, it's usually either syslog or somebody's custom API.
Patrick, cut the webinar now. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. We look forward to talking to you in the future. Take care.
Bye.
Later.